Hi, this is Kimberly. This is a synopsis of Chapter 7 of the book Letters from Christopher, Tragic Confessions of the Watts Family Murders by Sherilyn Cadle, and this chapter is entitled The Last Family Vacation. And I just sat here for the longest time trying to form words into a couple of sentences that would make a short video to describe this chapter. But I didn't know how. It was like trying to put a puzzle together when I didn't even know what the picture was. So let me start with the edges. That's always a good place on a puzzle that seems to be overwhelming you for whatever reason. Books deserve clarity. They shouldn't be making you constantly think you have misread something. I think this is why it's taking me so long to get through this book. Honestly, I don't know if it's the book or if it's all the ragweed outside, but I've had one giant headache for the last several days. It just so happens to coincide with starting this book. I'd really like to toss the book at this point, just forget it, but that would leave so many of you in the cold and those who are counting on me to read it for them so they don't have to fritter away their money. Plus, I don't want to deprive you guys of my pearls of wisdom. When Chris was leaving for the airport to reunite with his family in North Carolina, Chris said that Nikki told him in a text to fix issues with his wife and enjoy time with his family. So this gave Chris the warm and fuzzies. He liked that. He was not feeling pressured. So what did he do when he got there? He slipped his wife a Mickey on the very first night they were back together. This asshole brought Shanann an 80 milligram oxycodone when she complained to her husband, the man who promised, to be with her always in sickness and in health. And she told him she had a screaming headache, and he told her it was an over-the-counter medication. This poor woman spent the night vomiting, and he just sat back and let it happen and refused to help her because he wanted her to lose the baby he talked her into having. But then he was getting mixed signals from Nikki. And this confused Chris, and I know that's hard to believe that Chris was confused, but this is the guy that has a perpetually confused look on his dumb face. Nikki was demanding to know why Chris couldn't call her and why he could only text, and she was getting pissed off asking, "Are you with her?" Meaning his wife. It's not even like this piece of shit was even helping Shanann. But why did it matter if Nikki had lied to him about that? It's not like he was heeding her words of, oh, fix things with your wife and spend time with your family. I just wish Chris had never gone to North Carolina. All he did was torment the shit out of Shanann. He was very cruel. Cruel's not even the word, he was evil. And silly me, I thought this chapter was going to be all about their beach vacation. I would have really liked more detail on this, but we didn't get it. The book says when he returned from Colorado, he went to Nikki's using his work truck. I think it is supposed to say when he returned to Colorado or from North Carolina. Am I splitting hairs here? No, I don't think so because it's confusing. And he didn't return from Colorado. So when he got back to Colorado, this is where Nikki gave him a key to her apartment. He promised Nikki that his relationship with Shanann, you mean that thing they called their marriage? But he promised her it was going to end, even though he had not yet mentioned this to Shanann chicken shit. But wasn't this it indicated to her from Chris in the beginning? The lie he told Nikki about how he was getting divorced. And the book says, had she taken the girls and gotten on a plane and gone home, it might have changed everything. Well, sure, It might have changed everything. I I sure hope we're not blaming Shanann here for not doing that. Surely this is not the case. And who said this? Did Chris say that it may have changed things, or is it the author's opinion? The chapter mentions that Shanann had sent him, quote, a book, but it doesn't elaborate on the book or even give you the title of it. And the title of it was Hold Me Tight. But when Chris threw this in the trash, this is supposedly the first time he realized he could not have Nikki and his family at the same time. What? I I thought he had been planning the murder for weeks, according to earlier in the book. And Shanann received a text saying the book would be delivered August 10th. So is this the first time he came to the realization just 3 days before the murders? This book just contradicts itself all over the place. And this chapter only briefly mentions the last family vacation. He didn't want to interact with his girls with the beach, and that feeling was mutual. They didn't want to be around him either, and they kind of went out of their way to avoid him, and they didn't want to play with him and stuff. So, and at one point it starts explaining paranormal stuff from a child's vantage point, and it doesn't even start a new paragraph. Again, this chapter's just all over the place. From Chris going to North Carolina, a bit about the vacation in Myrtle Beach, to poisoning Shanann with the oxycodone, to her getting the ultrasound when she came back, Chris getting a key to Nikki's place, and supposedly when he came to the realization that he couldn't have his family and his girlfriend simultaneously. And then Mrs. Cadle talks about how God tried to make Chris wreck his truck on the way to Nikki's house one day, and oh, how I wish that had happened. And it says, and I quote, Christopher put it well when he said, we always think something new feels better than the old. It didn't take long for Christopher to find out the old was much more appealing and comfortable than the something new. What is the author talking about? Is she talking about Shanann? When, okay, so is he referring to Shanann as the old and Nikki as the new? And at what point did Christopher find out that the old was more appealing and comfortable? That it makes zero sense to me. Some of it seems like she's comparing Nikki and Shanann. And even if she is, how does this have anything to do with the final family vacation? It doesn't. And then a quote, yet his actions were so different than anything he had ever shown before. This sentence would have made perfect sense had it been paired with, well, something that made sense, but it didn't. It has nothing to do with anything else that's being said. And then this sentence, he was either trying to rid himself of guilt by going to Nikki's, or he didn't have any guilt at all, which is very possible since he did not feel remorse or guilt after he killed them. Again, what are we talking about here? A lot of this just makes zero sense to me. Honestly, the last two paragraphs in this chapter, they're just a bunch of random sentences thrown together. That's the only way I know how to portray it. It's almost as though she took some haphazard notes and ideas that came to her while pondering the book, shook it up and poured it out onto this page or pages of the chapter. However, had it had something to do with the last vacation, I might not have noticed. And now I feel like I'm being mean and judgmental, but I can't stop myself. So I'm going to go put myself in timeout and read another chapter. I will pick up with chapter 8 in the next video. Hopefully it will make more sense to me, but thank you for listening.